Thanks for tuning into the Hidden Tracks podcast. You can find us wherever you find podcasts or listen to music. When you have an opportunity, please give us a 5-star review, write a little note, tell us how we're doing. We really appreciate it. It helps us keep this thing going. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us at Facebook at Hidden Tracks. Instagram is at HiddenTracks99, and if you'd like to send in submissions or talk to us or give us any feedback about what we're doing, our email is myhiddentracks99@gmail.com. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show.
From your vantage point, was it worth collateral? Did it prick your finger as you begged the supernatural to take this cup away and let sleeping lies lay? 'Cause the seeds you'd sown would scatter all the same. And I don't have much interest in keeping all your secrets, so I try to replace them with thoughts of where I came from. The sunshine off the pavement, it's a migratory movement from within, but that's just how I've always been. That's just how I've always been.
What's up, everybody? Another week, another edition of the show. This week, I'm excited to have Gordon from the awesome band DOWNHAUL on the show today. Gordon, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's our absolute pleasure. Like we spoke a little while before we started this, but I am really excited to have you here. I've listened to all your stuff. I even went back to the deep dive to the 2016 days and watching the progression to where you are, to where your last album, which came out last year. So my apologize. I apologize by finding you later than I should have. That's just the nature of with all the music that's out there. But I did find you, which I ultimately is the most important part. So,
Yeah, no, you don't have to apologize to me. The fact that you found us at all was amazing.
so why don't you give us? Let's start out with if there is a shortened version, like it doesn't have to be 10
hmm
seconds, but a shortened version of how Downhaul became to be what it is in today's iteration.
Sure. So we are a Richmond band, but the band kind of started in Greensboro when I was living there and moved back to Richmond pretty shortly thereafter. So we started in Greensboro, but we've been a Richmond band for all of, except for maybe like 6 or 7 months. So Richmond is home, and we all the band members have full-time jobs. So Downhall's been kind of just a labor of love as we are able to do it. But we've been able to play some cool shows and release a bunch of music. Played our first show in 2017 and have been kind of just doing what we can ever since. And the band has grown a little bit. We haven't had like a crazy big break or anything like that, but we like doing it. We like writing. We like recording. And we like playing as much as we can. So that's just kind of where things are and where it seems like they're going to stay.
Well, what I want to commend you on something that there's I think there's more in today's society, the way the music world is, the lack of the full album is kind of starting to wear on me. The singles game of one single a month until the end of the year, and now it's a
Oh my
full
gosh,
album.
yeah.
And I want to commend you on your not only how you've gone about it, but just the consistency of whether there's a single or two and an EP in between and then an album. Like you're doing it the way that I fell in love with music, the old curmudgeony man that I am here on the other side of this microphone. But it's to that point where I appreciate it because now I always have something to go to, right? There's always, instead of finding a single on some stupid random playlist that you're like, wow, this is really fucking good, and then going and finding, oh, there's only two other singles and
Sure.
that's it. And then you kind of get disappointed. So was there a conscious effort when you started making music back in 2016 to not just play and I call it musical chairs of just, let's see if this one's going to work. If it doesn't, we're no longer a band.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, and there's so much pressure to do as many singles as you can for playlisting reasons, because that's got so much import now. But I think we always were interested in releases, a capital R release, whether that's an EP, whether that's a full length album. And we kind of always thought and wrote conceptually, we're trying to get something across that is bigger than just one song. And at the very beginning of the band, those were the first songs I ever wrote. So I was still kind of trying to find what and I still am. They talk about 10,000 hours. I don't think I'm anywhere close in songwriting. So I still consider myself like pretty new to songwriting. But and it's funny because you're trying to manage your own creative energy with kind of like listener fatigue
Yeah.
because a lot of people want singles and want to hear playlists and listen very passively to music. I think listeners like you are the rare exception who listen 5 times in 5 different ways, much less at all, to a whole record. And yeah, I'm rambling a little bit, but it's definitely cool to hear that people are more interested, or some people are interested in an actual release, like an EP or an album. And we've done singles, we've done like a 2-song release, and we did some singles, I think, year before last.
Yeah.
And
In
those were kind of,
2023. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Those were kind of just like songs that didn't really fit any of like our bigger releases, but we still thought were good enough to kind of put out.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes too, I've had conversation with artists where I'd say like, don't be selfish and keep stuff and don't think it's good, especially when it comes to creation and when it comes to the arts. When you have something that you've worked on, right, and you put who cares if it's minutes or hours or days or weeks, you put your heart and soul and your effort into creating something, and that's when I say just put it out there, because you never know who's going to find it or who's going to hear it. It's when you leave those crumpled up pieces of paper that you're throwing in the waste paper basket that's where I'm like, now you're just being selfish, because you probably have a fan out there that wants to hear everything from you. And doesn't matter, good, bad, or indifferent, fucking do it. Put it out and let someone figure it out for themselves, because you're going to be your own worst critic no matter what. So let someone else critique you and tell you you suck or tell you you're great, but at least someone's telling you something.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that I get kind of writer's block in the time between writing, recording, planning a release, and actually putting it out. So, like, when I have the Downhaul album all tracked and recorded, and you're doing all the logistics stuff, you're waiting on vinyl, you're doing all that, I like can't get anything else going for some reason. So I have to like clear the deck, like get the thing out, and then I can think about the next thing. I don't know why that is. I just have like this completionist like urge to like, okay, I need to like finish this and like get this out. Okay, now the Downhaul's album is out, I can like start writing the next like solo thing I want to do, or like work on a new thing with friends and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, that's great. I mean, starting and stopping and not finishing is, I mean, I am that completionist person as well. Like if I'm starting something, I'm not
Yes.
going to stop. Like that has what has luckily driven me with this show, that I have not missed an episode or a week since we started, because I started this thing, I said I was going to do it, and nothing's going to get in my way, because the end goal is ultimately to get someone to hear your music or someone else's music. That's the end goal. So if I stop, that means other people are going to stop, and I don't want that to happen. So I have to complete this. And I haven't put a limit on it yet, which I think at some point I'm going to have to.
Sure. Yeah.
Because with everything else that we have going on here, with Hidden Tracks Records, with the record store and the music venue and shows constantly and different things happening, it's like at one point I'm just going to be like, oh man, I am burning the candle at
Yeah,
both
you got
ends.
to take care of yourself. You do.
Yeah. So I want to get into a little bit of personal background stories with you. So I'm going to ask some personal questions. So I mean, the first one's going to start because it was so relevant to me and such a huge part of my life. Like, do you kind of have like one of your first musical memories, like the first time you heard music and it started to make sense? Like people who listen to the show know I was 6 years old. I heard the Beach Boys from 6 years old on, and here I am at 48 or 49, I forget. But music is still the biggest part of my life other than my family.
Yeah, and I echo that sentiment 100%. I think my first kind of like thoughts about music were probably hearing it in church. I grew up going to church a lot, and
Yeah, it's a huge
yeah,
thing. And I tell people all the time, because some people get shy to
yeah,
talk about, oh, it was church and youth,
yeah,
but I think one of the greatest things about church was the music and
sure,
what it
sure.
instilled in people. I thought it was great. So
Yeah,
sorry to cut you off, but continue.
and a lot of people around my age, around your age, I think started playing instruments because of or to be in their church's like praise band. And that's kind of a separate thing, but I think a lot of people had access to guitars and drums and basses, to play in the praise band. But I would say I remember hearing music in church, whether it was, the choir or organ music. And I remember my mom having, I want to say maybe tapes of the Beatles. My mom's fave was the Beatles, and that's like the first band I remember hearing. I remember hearing the Beatles playing in the house, whether it was a tape or a CD. We never had a record player set up. I've got, a million records now, I listen to them all the time, but growing up, I think it was either a tape or a CD of the Beatles, and then we would get like the Beatles movies from the library. And I remember thinking that was like really cool.
That's awesome. A lot of people have that beginning with the Beatles, especially
Yeah,
around our age. Like the Beatles were a thing, and I've said it many times. Like I understand why the Beatles were so influential.
yeah,
It's just one of those bands that never hit me. Even though, like growing up, I was in like Beatles play and had a sang "Let It Be" on stage, like doing all these things. But I was like, I get why people like it, but it just what. Even though I'm a Beach Boys fan, which is
yeah, yeah,
almost
yeah.
correlates with it, like it really is. And I was just like, I still to this day, I'm like, Beatles stuff comes on, I'm like, eh.
Yeah, it's
It's
fine.
really
Yeah,
weird. I'm like, okay, I get
and
it, but at the same time, I don't need. I don't. There's enough Beatle fans out there that I don't have to be one.
100%, 100%. And I wouldn't say that I am like uh there's like Beatles nerds out there who like
Yes.
read all the books and like know all the solo stuff and like get deep with all the lore and like I am not one of those. I listen to pretty much the greatest hits record or like the first couple full lengths where they were like borderline a punk band.
Mhm.
That's the stuff that I like really know. I don't know all the like experimental like long like I don't know all that stuff.
Yeah, I watched the documentary recently on a place in London where they first started playing, and they had like pictures of them with their like they literally look like the Clash. Like
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they had like almost mohawks and leather jackets, and I was just like, wow, that was the Beatles, and then their suit and tie. Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah, and they like those first recordings, they're like blown out and like clipping and like very like fast and upbeat and the drumming is pretty aggro for the time period. But yeah, no, I definitely like that early stuff and I listen to it now and like those songs hold up to me, but I wouldn't say that I'm like one of those like Beatles heads that I'm sure
Yeah.
you can think of or
Yes. Now, when did you kind of start finding your own music, and do you kind of remember what started to shape you? Like, there's usually that period in like middle school or high school, and you start to
Yep.
find that group, and then you hear a band or a song. Like, do you kind of
Yeah.
remember what it was?
Yeah, I could go on about this forever. For me, it was Green Day. For me, they were one of these bands that just, at that time and that age, they just reach you. I have memories of being in middle school and going to the talent show, and I was in sixth grade, and these eighth graders covered Minority, and I remember being like, what is that? Like, what they said the F word at the middle school talent fair and they played Minority and it was awesome. And then like that same week in my neighborhood, there was like some garage band that were like a friend of a friend's older brother or something. And they just like opened the garage door and were playing out into the neighborhood and they played Welcome to Paradise. So I heard these two Green Day songs in like the same week, just kind of ambiently that reached me, and they were definitely my like first favorite band and the band that I kind of branched out from. And my dad had like really cool taste in music, but I wouldn't say he was like, "Oh, here's my Talking Heads tape, here's like, this, that, and the other." I had an older sister, and I think she got more directly like my dad's old tapes and stuff like that. Like she had his like Clash tapes and stuff like that. Like so the first band that was like mine was Green Day. And that's how I learned how to play guitar. I had a tab book for international super hits and I definitely stunted my own guitar development learning to play that way, but that's how I learned. And from there, it was everything that you think about, like Tony Hawk soundtracks and skate videos and Warp Tour compilations and all these like pre-internet ways to discover music. And a couple years later, I asked for quote unquote CDs for Christmas, which is such a funny like middle school thing to do. I want CDs, mom and dad. But my dad we then had a local record store. It's gone now, called Blue Dog in downtown Fredericksburg, Virginia. And he said, my middle school age son wants CDs. and the record store clerk gave him the Blue Album by Weezer, Elephant by the White Stripes, and Kid A by Radiohead.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's what I got for Christmas that year, just because some college kid like took a little bit of time to like give my middle-aged dad like some thoughtful CDs.
That's awesome. And that's the reason why I own a record store today, right? Like it is those moments where the people took the time and to share music. And that's how this whole thing started. That's how you and I are talking, because all I wanted to do was share music with people and I didn't know how to do it. And it evolved into and now I get to share music. That's my life. Like
Yeah,
that is now my life. And I'm like,
that's amazing. Yeah.
I'm like, wow. And all I get to do is, I try to take time like that college kid did with your dad. I try to take time with everyone here and say, hey, listen, you don't need to buy this, you know, $50 Gracie Abrams album. I'm going to put you onto a woman from the 90s that
Yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah.
going to be able to buy this for your kid for $7 and let them listen to this. And that's where it came from. Like, and exploring and showing and sharing. Like, that's so great. Like, and I mean, you couldn't have gotten like 3 better different albums, right?
Isn't that crazy?
That's a great gauntlet to run for a
I
young
know.
kid.
I know. And it's kind of like, I'm sure my dad was like, "Oh, my kid loves Green Day." And he was like, "Okay, like I can, he probably doesn't know the Blue Album by Weezer, but he should listen to that." And then like White Stripes was probably like a buzz band of the day.
Hmm.
And then he was probably like, "Let's see if Kid A, gets through to your son."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just crazy.
That's so awesome. Now, do you kind of remember like the first time you found music that you were excited to share with your friends with? Like you discovered something that like a secret and that you wanted to share? Do you remember what band or artist it was?
I was extremely high on, and this is kind of funny, like when that record store closed, the only places to get CDs were uh we had an FYE, which I think was a Sam Goody before
Formerly Sam
that
Goody,
in
R.I.P.
the
Yep.
mall,
Yep.
and there was Barnes and Noble. And Barnes and Noble had CDs, a decent amount of CDs. Because where I grew up is pretty rural, so you had to go to like the mall in the county over to really buy anything, not just music. But um, I remember buying, because I thought their band name was cool and liked the art, the first album by Motion City Soundtrack.
All right.
I bought that like totally blind because
JPC. I still love fucking
yeah, yeah,
Justin.
and
Yeah.
I I don't remember what I was thinking because it was like a big investment financially. It's like 23.99 to buy this CD
Yep.
totally blind. But and in that time period when you invested in a CD or an album, you would like kind of force yourself to like it.
I
Or,
talk
you
about it
would
all the time. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
kids
yeah.
these it's the old curmudgeony man again. Kids these days have no idea what it was like to spend your hard-earned money,
Yes.
and if
Yes.
it sucked, you had to force yourself to like
Yeah.
it. And eventually you did, because you're like, oh, okay, now I find the redeeming factor after my 90th listen because I don't have another $24 to go
Yeah.
buy something
Oh,
else.
yeah, yeah. Or like you buy the wrong one because you don't have access to, the internet to tell you, "Oh, you want a Ramones CD? Well, you should buy this." So the first Ramones CD I got was Loco Live, which is like amazing in its own way. They're playing all these songs at the wrong tempos. It's this like legendary set. But like that's not what people think of when they think about like
No.
get your kid a Ramones CD. I didn't know that. It was the only Ramones CD they had, and I had like heard about them in skate videos and stuff. So I remember getting this Motion City Soundtrack CD, and this was like right before CD burning really happened. So I was like playing it for friends. I would like put it in my Walkman and put my headphones on their ears and be like, "Listen to this CD that I bought. And if you like it enough, like you go buy it too," kind of
Yeah.
thing. And I think shortly after that, they were on a Warped Tour compilation, and like then you could get those like pretty cheap. Warped Tour compilations were like
Yeah, they're
a third,
$5.
yeah, a
Yeah.
third the price of a
Yeah.
CD. And a lot of my friends would just buy those every year. And Motion City Soundtrack was on it like a little bit after I took this shot in the dark on the CD, and and I felt like I was like putting people onto that band. Especially, I was like validated when they were on the Work Tour comp that all my friends bought.
Well, isn't that so much fun though? Like just having that excitement, like that's, still being, I still have that feeling as a kid, as old as I am, like doing this now, like finding music and being like, oh, you gotta hear this, like check
Oh
this
yeah,
out. And having the younger generation come in here, hang out. Like I built a whole bar and everything in the store, and they just sit at the bar and I play them music and they're just like, what is this? And I just like, I love seeing the excitement in their eyes, like, oh, you like this? This is this. And then this is where it came from. And then it's just, it is so much fun, especially when it comes to music, that you can share these things with people and never have to be worried about like the judgment that may come from it.
exactly, exactly. And I mean, you're doing the Lord's work, especially having a space for bands to play. That's like, I mean, so many small show spaces closed during COVID that like just having one more somewhere else in the world is like such a net positive.
Yeah, and it really is. I've tried to explain to people that you can be good recording in your room and doing things, but until you get that live act locked in and show people what it really is supposed to sound like, what wanted it to sound like that's my favorite thing. That's why I love live music. That's why you can't keep me away. I go to as many shows as I can, and now we have shows here, and it's just like that live experience of this
Mm,
is actually how the song's supposed to sound is so important to get in front of people that I just that's why I built the stage and the sounds, and I was just like, yeah, I want the bands that I'm having on the show to have a place to stop through in New Jersey when they come, through the New York, Philly, and going to Connecticut and Boston and all that, and just stop by here. Here you go. Here's another stage, a new place for people to see you that have probably never heard you before, that are going to be like, fuck. And
yeah,
that's I try to pride myself. Well, if it's happening at Hidden Tracks, we got to go to that show because it's going to
yeah.
be good.
I mean, having and like it's funny because especially for small bands who like, if I couldn't tell you if I played in New Jersey if a single person would come, but if you have some amount of like following or like built-in crowd or friends that come out, that's like, I mean, that's like every small band's dream is that like the venue has a number of people that are just kind of interested in what the venue's doing.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to grow up in northern New Jersey, right outside of New York City, and having those places where it didn't matter who the band was if you've never heard them before. Well, there's a show at Maxwell's tonight. Well, we're going. Like we
Yeah,
don't know who it is,
yeah,
but we're going because it's at Maxwell's or Roseland Ballroom, a little more expensive ticket instead of $8, it's now 13. Doesn't matter. We're going to the city. We're going to Roseland. We're going to the show. Like
yeah,
that. That's just how it was, and we were very lucky. And I tell people all the time, like a lot of times we probably took it for granted, but
sure.
it's one of those things where just having that built in. And now we have another place in Jersey that I call the old Maxwell's that was world famous, is a place called Crossroads in Garwood, New Jersey, where again, they're getting bigger band. Like it's a 200 cap room. They're getting bigger bands that you get to see with 200 people. Like Thursday played 2 shows back to back in the same day there. Like, and like it's one of those things where then you get to see the up and coming bands as well, which is just awesome. Like having places like that to me is like, it's the greatest thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Now for you, when you, do you kind of remember, and I'll take the church side out of this, but like performance, do you kind of remember your first like performance in front of strangers?
Yeah, I played in the school band, so I played trumpet for a while, and I remember our first like band recitals. I took piano lessons as a really young kid, and we had piano recitals, and those were the school band, you can hide in the back and there's 100 of you or whatever, but I had piano recitals and those were really, really tough because you're up there by yourself. It's dead quiet. You're playing a song that you've, rehearsed a million times, and, you're probably playing some kind of song that other people know and they know how it's supposed to go. So those were like extremely nerve-wracking first performances. And I mean, every musician says they should have stuck with piano because
Yeah,
it's
there'd
for
be
whatever the
93 million piano players in the world if
I
we
know,
all did.
I know. But those early piano recitals, which often happened in large spaces because every kid has, several people there to see them. Those were definitely my first, like, I would say, stage fright kind of experiences.
Yeah, I mean those moments of, I mean, being a kid and having what you felt was the world staring at you,
Oh my
like
gosh, yeah.
those those moments in time, until like you get older and you're playing in like the the talent show in high school, and you're like, I don't give a shit, like
Yeah, yeah,
type of
yeah.
things. Like, here we go, we're just gonna make some noise on stage and see if one person claps for us. That's fine. We did it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the definitely did some high school talent shows, which, it was cool being one of the rock bands because there's like somebody up there juggling or something like that or singing a song, but like you and your friends are up there with your amps and your drum set, and it's like we're automatically one of the bigger ticket items here
Yeah.
at this talent show. But I the first ever band I was in was a ska band, and
What
I
was the name
played
of it?
after school special.
Of
The
course.
acronym was ASS, and we thought that was pretty clever.
Very
Uh,
clever.
but those shows, I was not the singer in the band, just the guitar player. And that was when I was in like early high school. And, that band would play and like 300 people would come see us. And I got this like crazy distorted idea of like what it meant to be in a band. Um, because there's seven of us and we were high schoolers, and I had all these friends and people would come, and we would like be bummed if the show didn't sell out, and it's just like such a funny like funny thing to think about in hindsight.
Yeah, but and I do like how you get a little jaded if something like that takes off, and then you start another band and there's,
Oh, no one's interested. Yeah,
yeah, there's three people there and no one's paying attention. Those three people
yeah,
aren't
yeah,
even
yeah,
paying attention.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it's a good reality check for musicians. Now, through your life, if you Downhole started performing in 2017,
Uh-huh.
is there a moment or a memory, let's say, that occupies this place in your brain, for good or bad? We usually like bad for these kinds of shows,
Yeah.
but for good or bad, that you'll never forget.
100%. Downhall has had so many unsuccessful shows, and there's this like unmistakable feeling of like wanting to melt into the ground and feeling like hot behind your face, and just like, why are we doing this? Like, this is so bad, like we just, and then like you're playing terribly, and like it's just, you know, I'll give you a very recent example that I will not forget. We just went on tour March, April, and we played in Indianapolis for the very first time. And, just nobody came. And the other bands, there was a band with some young kids in it, and they were extremely good. They had like a great sound. They had like, they covered like an obscure Velocity Girl B-side.
Wow.
They had like a very realized approach to music, presumably because they grew up with free access to all the recorded music in the history of the world. But they played before us, and they just like really shot the lights out, and they, had a very like complex musical vocabulary of influences and things like that. And they're younger, and they're probably like early college, I would say, and they were just great. And they had like their parents there at the show, but their parents all left, and we had to like set up and just play this like completely empty show in front of these really young kids who like definitely thought we were incredibly lame, and like it was just this moment of like, what are we doing? Like, there is no one here to see us. We are just like extending the night and like stopping people from going home by even playing. And then like we should really just like call it a night and pack up and like let these kids go back to their college and like let the venue shut down early. Like, but just like, and then it gets in your head, then you start playing badly, and then it becomes like this self-fulfilling thing. And like at the end of the night, they're like saying, "Oh, you guys were so good," in this way that like, you don't have to say it, guys. Like, we played badly and we're not as cool as you are. Like, we know it. We know it. We really know it. You guys are 19 years old and listening to, Sonic Youth and stuff like that. Like, you don't worry about us. Pretend it never happened. Just go your own way and never think of this again. But just like one of those moments where you have this really bad show and staring down the barrel of being out of touch and just like this crazy welling up of feelings. And I think all four of us really felt that one. And we're just like, man, like, thank God it's Chicago tomorrow and we're going to have a good show.
Now, on the flip side, why don't you give me a good memory that stands the test of time in your memory?
Okay, a good make it downhaul memory. We let me think. We've had really good shows, but I'm trying to think of a show that would be like not just like a nostalgic, like, oh, 6 years ago the band had a great release show for their first album. Uh, I'd say probably the first time we played Fest, which was in 2022.
I was supposed to be there.
We're playing this year if you're going to be there.
I am not. I already have I can do one festival a year now. That's like
Okay,
my limit.
That's a fair rule. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I'm doing Best Friends Forever Fest again this year.
Oh, that's awesome. I think
got a bunch of friends playing, so it's like
there's going to be a lot of good bands at that. But the first time we played Fest, we'd never played before, but we always kind of heard that like there's this like Fest magic where like no band plays an empty show at Fest because people are like going to come see you. And I was like, okay, but that's not going to apply to us. We've never played here before. We're not like a Fest punky band, and we were in like this. Have you been to Fest before?
Yes.
Okay, we played Lucy's, which is like awesome.
Yeah.
I love Lucy's.
Yeah, great
And
place.
like 5 minutes before we were going to go on, not a soul was in the room. We were like, oh my gosh, we're going to be the only band to play to no one at Fest. But in that last 5 minutes, it like totally filled up. It reached capacity, and like we played really well. We had our friend Max from Signals Midwest playing lap steel, and
nice. Maxwell Stern. I just saw him 2 weeks ago.
He's the best. He's like one of my best friends. He has done more for Downhaul than probably any other person. He has put us on in so many ways and like done art for us and taken us on tour, and like just he and I did a solo split EP a couple of years ago that is awesome and definitely worth checking out. But the set went great. We played great. People were really nice. That reached capacity. They turned people away at the door. Like, it just felt amazing. And it was like one of those things where it's the opposite effect, where like you start feeling really good and you start playing really well. And so that was like a very memorable set for me.
That's awesome. Now, when it comes to Downhaul, I always like to find out. This is one of my favorite questions that I get to ask. And if no one had ever heard your music, and you got to kind of, you can't tell people what the band is about. You say, here's one song of ours that you have to listen to, and you'll figure out who we are. What one song would you play for that person?
And that's tough because we've tinkered a lot. One Downhaul song to play, because I don't want to be like, oh, like the most recent record is the entirety of what Downhaul is. I also don't want to be like, oh, you have to listen to our old. What one song is a good? I'm tempted to say it's something like maybe one of the two songs off Tornado Season. Those two songs are both kind of like, here's like kind of all sides of us. Like, here's like the more ambient, like post rocky stuff, and then here's the more jangly, like straight ahead stuff. And there's some like of the country-ish stuff. And so yeah, I'd probably say either Walking Distance or Leverage. Or maybe the Riverboat. I think Riverboat is like a very good survey of like all the stuff that Downhaul kind of does well. So maybe I'll go with that. I'm going to go with Riverboat from 2023.
Parked on the bridge a hard time to quit. Right when the air starts to thaw. So digest the latest. You checked yourself out when it felt right. I'm so glad you made it. I can't explain what it feels like. No. Turn it around. It's all I've learned in Ohio State. Earn your front ground. Keep trying to do this all yourself. And we were watching the riverboat through the clearing by the docks. A static drifts from the marina, rehashing all the things you're taught. The startling upshot, a decade drive ride, can take on the baseboard of all that you stand for. Don't stack up your insides against all of their outsides. 'Cause it's easy to forget that nobody's perfect. So turn it around. It's all you'll learn and all you'll say. 'Cause I ran aground when I tried to do this all myself.
All right. I like how you talked yourself
Yeah,
out
yeah,
of
yeah.
answers.
I had to
no,
wind and weave. Had to work
Stick
my
and
way through
move,
it.
bud. Stick
Yeah,
and move.
exactly right.
Now, doing having to pick something like that, do you have your own favorite song that you've released to date? Like, because it can be completely different.
Yeah,
Then-
great question. My favorite is Sinker off the new album.
Mhm.
Love playing it, loved recording it. I think it was a good like kind of setup for the new album. I love how concise it is. I think the lyrics are right where I want them to be. And it's one of the songs that we like stretch out a little bit live and jam a little bit. And I think it's just like a very effective, like, I don't know, it just feels good to listen to. I don't listen to our stuff a lot, but like sometimes we'll get like someone will like post a story on Instagram or whatever. And if it's like Sinker, it's like, okay, this does sound as good as I hope it does.
Well, I love being able to ask these questions and like artists having the answers, because what you said right there is so relevant. And I don't think people take a lot of stock into that. Bands really don't listen to their own music. One, because it takes forever for you to come up with something to record, and then you record it, then you listen to it over and over again. Then
Oh
you put the
yeah,
album together, you listen to it again, and then the album comes out, and by that time you're almost like, I'm done, but now I got to go play these
please.
songs.
Yeah, yeah.
and it's one of those things like I think people do take it for granted that how much work goes into it. So sometimes if you go see a band live and they don't play your favorite song that you wanted to hear, like at times artists are extremely sick of themselves. So just be weary of that, people, when next time you go see a band that you love and they might not play your favorite song. It could be because they've played it 1,000 fucking times in the past 2 months, and they've listened to it so many times prior to it coming out. Unfortunately, they're not going to get to it tonight.
Yeah, yeah. And our situation is we did all this dumb stuff. Like we had all these old recordings. Everything until our first album is in this guitar tuning that I like essentially made up. And then Proof is all on a baritone guitar. So like if we wanted to play like a career spanning set, I'd have to bring three different guitars. So like people get, you know, bummed out when we show up and we play just our most recent stuff. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, yeah, this is like the new stuff that we do want to play. We don't want to play the old stuff for the billionth time. And second of all, I have this like logistical hurdle between being able to play recent stuff and old stuff. And also, I don't remember it. I just don't
Yeah.
remember it. We
Yeah.
don't practice it, and I don't like let's sit there and if I were to like do some kind of like there's no demand for this, but like an anniversary set of our previous stuff, I'd have to like really sit there and relearn all the stuff I was doing.
Yeah, and I don't need to watch you try and get the tuning correct for 5 minutes prior to
I know.
going into another song. So
Exactly. You don't want nobody wants to see that.
no. Now, speaking of live experiences, and we've talked about your own, do you kind of remember? So this is twofold. Like, do you remember the first concert you ever saw and who it was, and then maybe the first concert you ever got to pick to go to yourself? Because a lot of times they're different. Mine were way different. Mine was Kenny Rogers was my first concert I ever went to, and the first one I got to pick was Suicidal Tendencies at Metallica. So
That's awesome. Yeah. Really good question. I know we would have again concerts at church. So like some nights of the week there would be like traveling like Christian musicians who would like their tour date would be at your church. And I'm fairly certain that was like one of my first shows. There was a
now from the area, so it's like, was it DC Talk? I'm sorry, I'm really
I
going
was about
Christian
to
rock here.
say, I was about to say, but the first show I wanted to go to was DC Talk's farewell tour.
Wow. Look at that.
Yep.
People, we did not plan this whatsoever. This is just how
That's
music works.
exactly right. So I definitely saw somebody at church who was just like a touring musician, and I can't remember, but my dad took us, my sister, and I think one of her friends to, I believe it was the Patriot Center at George Mason University for a DC Talks farewell tour, and the format was each of the guys did a solo set, and then the band did their set, and it was amazing. I mean, they played all the hits. They sounded great. Even the solo sets were like pretty good because like Toby Mac had been doing solo stuff, I think, already. But the other guys, I don't know what to extent they were, but that was definitely the first concert that I was like stoked to go on, um, like myself.
Wow. I love how we just we just had
Yeah.
a grand slam on that one. That was
Yeah, we did. We did. That was the first one. And a lot of people have first concert stories that are, oh, well, my parents I got to go to Warped Tour, stuff like that. So for a lot of people, when I say my first concert was DC Talk, they don't know that reference because despite being like the biggest
yeah.
Christian band who had like crossover hits, who got radio play, and a lot of people just don't know them.
Yeah, it's not the PODs and the Evanescence and
Exactly. Yeah.
and to be I've talked about it plenty of times because I had a bunch of artists, but like growing up, like Tooth and Nail was and Equal Vision originally starting, like they were Christian labels, like they
100%.
were,
Yep.
and people don't ever really realize that. And I think it's an important part, regardless of, your faith, what you believe, anything like that. Like, I think it's an important part to understand where a lot of that music that you fell in love with a long time ago that you had no idea about, to know that it was rooted in someone's faith. Right. And it was, it's maybe it's not a part of their life anymore, but
Sure.
those bands, the reason why you know them was because they were getting on these labels that had this like indie tinge to it, but it
Yeah.
was really a Christian label when it started,
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember there was, I don't remember the name of the magazine, but there was a magazine who would do like, if your kid listens to X secular artist, they might like Y, like Christian similar.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom knew I was really into Green Day, so she would ask me if I wanted to hear bands like Reliant K,
Yeah.
who ended up being like a pretty big band, regardless of like with in or outside of Christian music. I just remember there were like these like graphics that were like, if your kid is listening to Eminem, like you should get them like this Christian rap CD.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how successful that those
I don't think
comparisons ever
that,
were.
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
those crossovers ever worked out pretty
I
well.
don't think they did either.
I mean, I remember my mom and I was listening to Beastie Boys cassette. I may have told this story before, but I'm blasting the Beastie Boys License to Ill in my room on my boombox. And my mom comes up, takes it away from me. And our youth group leader had this thing, trade tapes, like tapes that your parents didn't want you to have, and he'd give you another tape. And it was the worst trade in the history of mankind. It was Beastie Boys License to Ill for a Michael W. Smith tape. And like it
Wow.
goes down. It's worse than the Herschel Walker trade to, the Vikings and the Cowboys getting everything they got. Like it is
Yeah,
worse.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
the worst trade in history. But listen, don't get me wrong. Michael W. Smith had some great fucking songs. Like I
He
say,
sure did.
there's,
He sure did.
but in my life, that's the worst trade I've ever made.
It's so funny.
Now, speaking of artists and stuff, do you have like an artist or a band per se that never lets you down? It's someone that you constantly turn to. I hate the my favorite band kind of connotation. I have bands that never let me down that I always turn to when I need something to listen to, and it just
Yeah.
becomes that constant thing that I put them on while I'm maybe searching for something else.
Great question. It's very hard because for a long time I would tell people Green Day's my favorite band. For a long time that was like my safe harbor. Green Day's my favorite band. Uh, but as the years go on and they release more and more music that I have not really connected with, to put it diplomatically, it's very hard to be like, oh, my favorite band is this band who put out like 10 years worth of good music 20 years ago, or like
Yeah.
30 years ago. Like my favorite band is this band who had this great run from 1990 to 2004 or whatever it is. But so the answer that I like, and it's also hard for me to like really go with a legacy band as like the band that never lets me down, because it's like I could say like, oh, like the Talking Heads never let me down, or like Sonic Youth or Nirvana, like those are my. But it's almost like I have some like mental block with saying that one of these like venerated legacy bands is my favorite
Yeah,
band.
I get it.
So and it's also like y- I don't feel like I'm like qualified to say like Sonic Youth is my favorite band, because they have such a crazy discography and lore and like legacy that I like really wasn't there for. So what I usually say is that Against Me is my favorite band,
I get it.
because it's my opinion that Against Me never missed. I like all their major label stuff. I like the stuff after the major label. I even like the last thing they did. And like I was there for Against Me's rise and like quote unquote fall and like dissolution. And like there's so much variety in their discography. There's so much stuff that scratches different itches for me, that like I'm almost always I want to listen to an Against Me record, whether it's like their most produced poppy major label stuff, or like their true like recorded in a trash can crusty stuff. Like that's a band for me that like the entire discography holds up in like a pretty rare way, which I know is a very hot take. But I do like celebrate that band's entire catalog and like the run that they had.
No, that's awesome, and I completely understand the sentiment of trying to find those legacy bands, uh, and it comes across a lot of times too, like that really isn't, we're over 250 episodes here. I rarely is there legacy bands. Like, yes, the Beatles come up often, and I usually tell people that's a cop out. Like, I usually,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
I'm like, that's a cop out. Like, let's be
yeah, yeah.
honest. Like, it's easy to choose that. And I always, it's always hard for me. Like, I don't have one, I have two, and it's just because two completely different bands, but it's like my two are, I think, forever. I don't think I've ever changed the answer even since I was in high school. Like, it's just, I have two bands that no matter what, I'm there for it all, and they've really never missed for me. Except one did miss, and I came back to it years later, and I was like, well, I was the asshole.
Well, who are these bands?
The first one is the Posies, and the second one is Face to Face.
Okay. Okay, I know Face to Face. I don't know the Posies at all.
Yeah, the
Where
Posies.
should I start with the Posies?
So the Posies, I mean, the greatest intro into the band. They were kind of they're power pop, as I called it,
Sure.
but like they didn't start that way. Like it started two guys, Ken Stringfellow and John Auer, like acousticy with Failure. Then their second album is called Dear 23. Their third one is Frosting on the Beater, which is their most acclaimed album, but that is
Okay.
because it's so as I say, it's accessible to anyone that wants to hear music, because it is power pop. It's beautiful vocals, it's harmonies
Yeah.
between two great singers and different styles of songs, and you got grungy, distorted guitars. It's very power pop, that in my essence of what I call power pop. But it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it is by far and away, if you're going to start somewhere with the Posies, that's where you start, and then you work your way into the other stuff. Like, I was lucky, I got to them right away, like right when they were starting, and got to watch their career take off. One of my favorite moments of my life is Ken Stringfellow of the Posies performed here in November. So like these are,
Wow.
and it's always been, if you can ask anyone who's ever come across me, it's always been either Face to Face or the Posies. Like
That's awesome. I'm gonna
that's
listen to
it.
them today. That's awesome. I no, I'm definitely interested in that description. The like melody power pop thing is something I like, but am not like super well versed in. I like Fountains of Wayne. I like that kind of like corner of the, I guess we can call it power pop world, and like these bands that were just writing really good melodies, but I'm not like some like, like encyclopedia
Yeah.
of like Geffen Records bands that didn't quite get there in 1994.
Yeah,
Like
and that's who they, and that's who they were. That
I'm
was
positive. Yeah,
yeah.
I it's just
Posies
like,
were a Geffen band. They were signed with Dear 23, and then Frosting on the Beater, Amazing Disgrace, and then they were just dropped. But they played with everybody. You know what I mean? Like, they played with Oasis. They played with everybody, and they had this great little niche career that, and there's last album came out a couple years ago, and every album that comes out, and again too, this is where I always have when you have two like front men, like two lead singers, and as I looked at it, like it happened with Dinosaur Jr., it happened with all these other bands, when they do break up for a little bit and they come back together and they start recording new albums, now you're just getting like half the songs are this guy's solo and half the songs are this guy's solo, instead of the way it used to be. But I still love both of them and what they create, so that's why I'm still so in on it.
oh yeah. Yeah, I have definitely like having two songwriters contribute to a band is something that like I'm a huge Drive By Truckers fan, and they've had as many as like four songwriters
Yeah,
contributing at a time. So like it's something that's definitely like floating around in my mind
yeah,
because
My Morning Jacket was like that, and
yeah, yeah. It would be really nice to be able to put out more albums because you got some other guy writing half the record.
yeah. It just, it goes back to that day. Like, I am a power pop kid and like, yes, I'm the guy who's covered in tattoos, and punk rock was a big part of my life, still a big part of my life. But at the same time, like, power pop was my honey hole, because it was like, and it goes back to the Beach Boys. It goes back to Brian Wilson and Mike Love and their harmonies and melodies, to
Stacking up the harmonies.
yeah, like just coming all the way front forward. And that's where, I scream from the mountaintops. Like, I was very lucky that when I first got into the Goo Goo Dolls, they were like hardcore punk rock band, and then
Yeah.
they came out with this amazing power pop album that I share with people all the time, because they probably never heard it and don't even know about it. But their album Superstar Car Wash, in my top 10 greatest albums of all time, and it has a little punk tinge to it, but it's when they jumped to power pop before they started
Yeah.
doing A Boy Named Goo, which was another great album, and Dizzy Up the Girl, which was kind of where I stopped, but it was like that sound was like the greatest. Like to me, it's the greatest. Like it's perfection because it's beautiful vocals. It's great tonality on guitars, good drum licks. Like it's just like, this is, for me, it was always like the perfect package.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's been cool that it had kind of this moment for a little bit where, you know, people were kind of interested in bands that were kind of carrying that torch today, because it's just nice hearing people sing melodies and sing a harmony with it. That's been a nice reprieve from some of the stuff that's been trendy lately.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm gonna have a couple more questions. I want to keep you here much longer.
Totally.
So I'm going to go with all the things we've talked about so far in your life. Is there something that you listen to, get tons of enjoyment out of, that people will be really surprised that you listen to? Maybe not regularly, but you really love listening to it.
Yeah, good question. I think everyone knows that I like ska, so that's probably not very exciting. I would say that and I feel like it's kind of like acceptable now that people like country, so that's probably not as good. I would say I don't think people know, and I don't think they believe when I tell them that I know my way around the Iron Maiden discography a decent amount.
I am.
And
You got to come to
yeah,
Jersey and see the store, because
yeah.
I'm a Maiden guy. So
Hell yeah. And I don't think people believe me when I say it, and no one ever know one of like my every guitar player has their like go-to guitar riffs that they just like play when they're sound checking. The Fear of the Dark intro is one of mine,
uh-huh.
and the quantity of people that have been like, "Is that the Rockin' Rio version of Fear of the Dark?" is like zero. No one ever tags it. It's like people will sit down and they'll play riffs for sound checks that are like recognizable, but I'll be doing the, "Na, na, 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 na," and I think one person ever has been like, "Wait." But I know my way around the Iron Maiden discography a bit, and I when they put something new out, I do listen, and I've been, keeping tabs on Bruce's solo stuff too. So I think that's probably the answer that would surprise the most people.
That's awesome. I've given, and you can ask people that have come in here. Like Sunday is kind of my day. Our store's right next to a coffee shop, one of
Yeah,
like the premier coffee shops in New Jersey. So I'm very lucky in that regard. But like people will come in and I'll hold like Sunday sermons on Iron Maiden, and like there'll be people around. I'm like, "Are you guys ready I'm taking you to church right now, because
that's awesome.
I'm
Yeah,
putting on
yeah, yeah.
Power Slave," which to me is like, here you go.
Yep,
I'm putting on
that's the
Power Slave.
one.
This is a symphony. This is a heavy metal symphony that it's all you need to know. Like, here you go. Don't get me wrong. I love
Nina,
every
Nina,
Iron
Nina,
Maiden.
Nina, Nina,
Yeah.
Nina, 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 Nina,
But
Nina. Yeah,
but this is it. And people would just be like, "My God, dude, I never thought." I'm like, exactly. Like,
yeah.
just
People
go
don't
home and
know.
listen to Power Slave. Now you know. Like, here it is. And yeah, the one guy's like, "You're holding Sunday church and doing a sermon on Power Slave." He's like, "This is great." I'm like,
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
time for all of you to get back in attendance.
yep. All right. World's going to end in 5 minutes. Meteors hurling into the earth. You can only listen to one song and one song only. What song are you listening to?
Just like Heaven by The Cure.
Wow.
That's my song.
Fast. Nice.
That's my song. That's one of the first ones I ever learned to play and sing at the same time. That's like, I don't know. It's just like a perfect song. The lyrics are perfect, melody's perfect. The like production is really interesting, and people don't realize they probably do realize, but there's so much like ear candy involved on the technical side, and it's just I don't know that song. I have like several special moments in life that I associate with that song, and it's just great.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've challenged people to show me a bad Cure song, and they've never been able to do it.
Yeah, and their new album is awesome too.
I think
It's
it's
like,
phenomenal. I think it's
yeah,
absolutely great. And they announced it in the most punk rock way in the history of music. Did you hear the story how they announced
what
it?
was the story?
The story was Robert Smith walked into the first pub that they ever played as The Cure,
Yeah.
had an eight, just a piece of paper that said new Cure album coming out next week, and stuck it to the poster board and walked out.
Wow.
And
I
that's
had no idea. I don't
yeah.
know how I didn't know.
And it
So
got traction.
wow.
People were like, "Is this real?" And then they started reaching out to their management, like, "Yeah, it's real." But that's how they announced it. It's so punk
Wow.
rock. I was
I
like, "That's the
love
greatest."
that. I don't know how that story didn't reach me. Wow, okay.
Yeah,
No, I mean, The Cure's an amazing band, and this is another band where, like, I have spent hundreds of hours listening to. I own several records, several CDs, but, like, I don't feel qualified to, like, speak on because there's so much lore and books and live albums and, like, I just when with legacy bands, I am just, like, so aware all the time of my own, like, knowledge
yeah,
limitations.
yeah. Your naivety to something that is, so big is, I'm with you on that. Like, but I will sit here till the day is gone and just say, yeah, no one can walk in here and give me a bad Cure song. They're
I
all
know.
good. So,
I agree. I agree.
all right, last question before we go on to our weekly 3 segment. um, Again, I think we're far past it now, but I like to preface it in light of what happened in LA. We're well past that now. This has nothing to do with it. Question existed well before all the tragedy that happened with the LA fires. But if your home is burning to the ground, your whole family, your pets, everyone's out safely, and you're running back in for one more piece of, whether it be musical memorabilia or musical instrument, one musical thing, what is that one thing you're grabbing first?
Really good question. So there are, I would say I have two special guitars. I have a white Nash Telly that was my wedding present from my wife, and it's amazing. And I have never played it live because I'm afraid to leave the house with it. That is the thing that comes to mind first. But
It's a hell of
I've
a
got
present. My wife got me sweatpants for
yeah,
our
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But I've got two hands is the thing. So with the other hand, I'm probably grabbing my acoustic guitar. I only have one acoustic guitar. It's a Martin that I bought during COVID and has been just like a companion to me. I played it on the new record. I played it on my first solo record. I played it on the solo thing I did with Max. And it's just I don't think it's irreplaceable, but I have like some good sentimental memories with it. I think it sounds just right. It smells amazing. So that's probably what's in the other hand after I've got the wedding guitar in the right hand.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, before we move on to our final segment, Gordon, I'd love to give you this opportunity now to tell our audience and people how to find what it is Downhaul's doing, how to keep up with everything that you guys are doing, like all your handles and all that
Yeah,
lingo and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. The only two social media pages we really use are the artist formerly known as Twitter, which is essentially unusable at this point, and we have a band Instagram page. So the band Instagram page is probably the answer. I think it's just Downhaul Band on Instagram. Um, that's where we have all of our show announcements and new music, and you can get in touch with us there if you want to. We're on Spotify and Apple Music and all that, but if you're picking just one, I would say Instagram's the way to go.
Awesome. Well, we are in our final segment. Our final segment is called our weekly threes. It's 3 things you're listening to that you would like to share with people. You get to give me your 3, then I give my 3.
Oh yeah, great segment. What am I listening to this week? I am very excited for this new Adrian Lenker record that's coming. Adrian Lenker is the singer of Big Thief, who has an amazing solo career. And I'm on this huge live album kick, and there's like Adrian Lenker has like a 43 song live album coming out on Friday, but it was recorded like very experimentally by this guy named Andrew Sarlo, who has worked with bands like Howdy and Bon Iver. And the bio for it says that he recorded some of the songs like outside of the venue or like down the hallway. So it's going to be like a pretty strange and cool approach to a live album. So that's what I'm gonna be listening to shortly. But the other two, I'm always listening to, and this is one of my like lifetime staples. Drive-By Truckers live at Plan 9, July 13th, 2006. Plan 9 Records is one of the, I would say, is my favorite record store in Richmond, Virginia. It's amazing. Uh, Not just because they stock Downhaul records, but also because there's this amazing live record that DBT put out there when John Neff was playing pedal steel, Jason Isbell was still in the band. Definitely check that out. And for my third, let's take a look. I have been listening to the new Bon Iver record, which is not exactly a deep cut by any means, but I think he's just still got it and is getting even weirder with his production approach. And melodies are still awesome. And anybody who knows about Bon Iver probably has an opinion on him already. So it's not like I'm going to win a bunch of people over, but check it out if you're interested because I think it's really good.
Yeah, it's an album we can't keep in stock right now. We
That's
brought it
awesome.
in.
Hell yeah.
It's gone. So he's got his fans. Justin's got
There you
his
go.
fans. So my three for this week, my first one is a band called Brutus. The name of the album is Unison Life. They're a Belgian trio, hard rock, female vocals, just good stuff. Give that a whirl. Number two is a
The
band.
guitar player in Downhaul loves Brutus.
Okay.
The other one, yeah.
Number two is a band called Jackson Pines. The name of the album is Purgatory Road. They're a folky band with folky rock going along with it. And last but not least, this week I listened to it when it first came out, and for some reason it popped up again, and I've been crushing it. Is Have Mercy's album Still Numb?
Wow, okay. I haven't checked that out yet. We've played with them a few times. I need to check out their new album.
Yeah, it's so good. And, I was very heartbroken when I had heard that they were done for a little bit and then they came back. So I'm very happy again to have new Have Mercy stuff. Very underrated band out there in the world that I think more people have to listen to because they're just great. So those are my three for this week.
I love it.
Well, Gordon, before we get out of here, I'd just like to say a couple things. Thank you so much for taking your time and speaking with me today. But more importantly, thank you for creating the music that brought us together. That to me is the most important thing. The artistry, everything that you put into it. We wouldn't be talking to each other, from states apart if it wasn't for you creating something that connected with me. So it's huge heartfelt thank you for that. To me that's what means the world to me, is someone creating something that I can connect with. And now that we've got a chance to spend some time with each other, thank you for being the person that you are as well.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's under-recognized, thankless work to highlight small bands, and it just can only come from a place of altruism and excitement about art. And there are not enough people in the world like you who not only seek out and listen to small bands, but lift a finger, much less expend all this energy to actually boost and platform them. So, right back at you. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Everybody, you know what time it is now. It's time to go out, listen to Downhaul, and have a great fucking time.
That's right.
Melting
Thanks again for tuning into the Hidden Tracks podcast. We hope you enjoyed this week's show. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at HiddenTracks99. Also, send all your submissions myhiddentracks99@gmail.com. Tune in next week. You may find your new favorite band, and don't forget to go out and have a great fucking time.